Hi students, it's Mrs. Nice. So we are going to be reading this chapter about the achievements of the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas. Before I start reading, here's what your notes are for this time. So you have some slides. They pretty much all look the same. The first one, so the directions say, thoroughly read chapter 26, which I'll be reading to you, and then as you read, take notes on each of the sections in the corresponding boxes. Be sure to include at least 2 examples of achievements in each area listed below. Explain why the examples you chose were significant. You can also add drawings or pictures. So for the Maya, you're going to write about 2 examples of their science and technology, and then explain them a little bit and why they're important. 2 examples of their arts and architecture, explain them and why they're important, and then 2 examples of language and writing, explain why they're important as well. You'll follow the same process for the Aztec and the Inca. So let's go ahead and start reading the chapter. Achievements of the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas. What were the significant achievements of the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas? Introduction. There were 3 great peoples of the early Americas, the Mayas, the Aztecs, and the Incas. In this chapter, you will study the cultures of these people and explore their unique achievements. So we learned earlier in the year about the Aztecs and all of their sacrifice, and you can see right here on the map each of these civilizations. So right here you have the Mayan civilization. They were the earlier of the 3, and their height is around 900 Common Era. Then you have the Aztec Empire, which is a little bit north of it right here, but also taking up some of the old Mayan lands as well. And the height of that empire is in the 1500s. And remember, we learned about how Hernan Cortez came in with the conquistadors and defeated them. And then down here, simultaneously with the Aztec Empire, but farther south in South America, we have the Inca Empire. Again, around the 1500s was its height. So these are the 3 empires we're learning about. The history of these civilizations stretches from very ancient times to just a few centuries ago. Mayan civilization dates back to 2000 before Common Era. It reached its height in what is called the Classic period, from about 300 to 900 Common Era. The Aztecs and the Incas built their empires in the 2 centuries before the Spanish arrived in the 1500s. Scholars have learned about these cultures in various ways. They have studied artifacts found at the sites of old settlements. They have read accounts left by Spanish soldiers and priests. And they have observed traditions that can still be found among the descendants of the Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas. The more we learn about these cultures, the more we can appreciate what was special about each of them. The Mayas, for example, made striking advances in writing, astronomy, and architecture. Both the Mayas and the Aztecs created highly accurate calendars. The Aztecs adapted earlier pyramid designs to build massive stone temples. The Incas showed great skill in engineering and in managing their huge empire. In this chapter, you will study these and other achievements of the Mayas, the Aztecs, and the Incas. You will focus on 3 main areas of culture: science and technology, arts and architecture, and language and writing. Okay, so let's start with the Mayas, section 26.2. Many of the greatest achievements of the Mayas date from the Classic period, about 300 to 900 Common Era. Hundreds of years later, their ideas and practices continued to influence other Mesoamerican groups, including the Aztecs. So, advances in science and technology. The Mayas made important breakthroughs in astronomy, so the study of the stars, and mathematics. Throughout Mayan lands, priests studied the sky from observatories. They were able to track the movements of stars and planets with great accuracy. The Mayas used their observations to calculate the solar year. So the solar year is the time it takes Earth to travel once around the sun. The Mayan figure for their year of 365.2420 days is amazingly precise. And as you guys know, our modern day calendar is 365 days. So it is very precise to what we have today. These calculations allowed the Mayans to create their solar calendar of 365 days. They also had a sacred 260-day calendar. Every 52 years, the first date in both calendars fell on the same day. This gave the Mayas a longer unit of time they called a calendar round. For the ancient Mayas, this 52-year period was something like what a century is to us. Mayan astronomy and calendar making depended on a deep understanding of mathematics. In some ways, the Mayan number system was like ours. The Mayas used place values for numbers, just as we do. However, instead of being based on the number 10, their system was based on 20. So instead of place values for ones, tens, and 100s, the Mayas had place values for ones, 20s, 400s, 20 times 20, and so on. All right, in this picture, Mayan priests still use the sacred calendars. This priest is at a ceremony to celebrate the end of the Mayan solar calendar of 5115. He prays for peace and prosperity in the coming year. The Mayas also recognized the need for zero, a discovery made by few other early civilizations. In the Mayan system for writing numbers, a dot stood for 1, a bar for 5, and a shell symbol for 0. To add and subtract, people lined up two numbers and then combined or took away dots and bars. So they had the number 0, you guys, which is not all civilizations had that. So that's something that kind of stands out about the Mayan civilization. Okay, moving on to Mayan arts and architecture. The Mayas were equally gifted in the arts. They painted using colors mixed from minerals and plants. We can see the artistry of Mayan painters in the Bonampak murals, which were found in Chiapas, Mexico. The murals show nobles and priests, as well as battle scenes, ceremonies, and sacrifice rituals. The Mayas also constructed upright stone slab called steles, which they often placed in front of temples. And up here it says a stele is a vertical stone slab or pillar with carvings or inscriptions. Most steles stood between 5 and 12 feet tall, although some rose as high as 30 feet. Steles usually had three-dimensional carvings of gods and rulers. Sometimes the Mayas inscribed them with dates and hieroglyphics in honor of significant events. Another important art was weaving. We know from steles and paintings that the Mayas wove colorful fabric in complex patterns. Women made embroidered tunics called huipiles and fashioned lengths of cloth for trade. Mayan women still use similar techniques today. They still make their huipiles in traditional designs. People from different towns can be distinguished by the colors and patterns of their garments. That kind of reminds me a little bit of like Scottish kilts and how the different designs you could tell where someone is from. Continuing. In architecture, the Mayas built temple pyramids from hand-cut limestone bricks. An unusual feature of Mayan buildings was a type of arch called a corbel vault. Builders stacked stones so that they gradually angled in toward each other to form a triangular archway. At the top of the arch, where the stones almost touched, one stone joined the two sides. The archway always had 9 stone layers representing the 9 layers of the underworld, the place where souls were thought to go after death. So this is cool in architecture. They did have like a vault arch shape called the corbel vault. In this picture, we could see weaving is a traditional Mayan art passed down through generations of women, and we can see this woman weaving here. Okay, Mayan language and writing. The Mayas developed the most complex system of writing in the ancient Americas. They used hieroglyphics, or picture symbols, to represent sounds, words, and ideas. Hieroglyphic inscriptions have been found on stoneware and other artifacts dating from possibly as early as 300 before Common Era. Over time, the Mayas created hundreds of glyphs. And you can read up here. A glyph is a symbol for a word, idea, or sound in a hieroglyphic system of writing. So, the Mayas created glyphs. Eventually, scribes could write down anything in the spoken language because remember, glyphs can represent sounds. They often wrote about rulers, history, myths, and gods, and astronomy. Not all Mayan groups, though, shared the same language. Instead, they spoke related dialects. Here, a dialect is a regional variety of a language. Today, about 4 million Mesoamericans still speak one of 30 or so Mayan dialects. So again, the descendants of the Mayas are still around. They keep these traditions of weaving alive. A lot of descendants of the Mayas still speak some of the Mayan dialects, and so we still see this culture in the modern day. Okay, I'm going to make another video for the next section. Go ahead and fill out your notes for this part about the 2 things for each one: science and technology, arts and architecture, language and writing. Don't just write what it is, write why that's important, or give like a description of what it is.